Alright, so this video has been a long time coming, but I really wanted to make it for this character. I feel like I owe it to the character. I worked hard on it. I have a lot of stuff to say about it, and hopefully I'm gonna keep it short, sweet, and to the point, because I could go into a lot of detail on each gear, and I'm gonna try not to, because if I do, it'll be probably like a 30-minute video, and nobody wants to watch that. So I'll go kind of bullet points on each item, and then I have some leveling clips as well that I want to go over. But yeah, so we did get 175-60. The build that we went for is 120 strength, 90 agi, 100 vit, and 120 dex. Um, this build is kind of a hybrid build. You can go Matto, you can go Axe, and you have everything that you want out of both builds. It's kind of the best of both, but it's also a little bit deficient on the woe side because you kind of depend on some gear for your instant cast, and you can kind of get screwed over in woe, and if you don't have instant cast from stats. So a woe build would probably have 120 and 120 dex and more vit, less strength. But this works for both. It totally would work for either. Um, it just it's a hybrid build is what it is. So the thing that makes the build really work for leveling is the work cap. That's an OCP item. It came out recently, and I want to go over it because it's actually one of the more important pieces of gear. What it does at the end of all of the effects, you can see it's a really long effect, but at the end of it all, it gives 15 MDef, 10 Vit, 100% Axe Tornado damage, 50% boss monster damage, and plus 100 attack. And that is based on if you have Axe Boomerang 5 and Fa Magic Decoy level 5 as well. So we have all the prerequisites. At plus 10, it also bypasses 100% of defense of monsters. So that effect is insane. That's like a Samurai Spectre card, which is an MVP card. The Axe Tornado damage is like having multiple true Howard cards just in your headgear, and the attack increase is gigantic. It's bigger than what some MVPs will give you. So work cap is insane. The value that you get out of it is way more than you pay for it. Like it costs 3 bill, but those like that MVP card, Samurai Spectre, is probably like 8 bill or plus 8 or more. Like you get so much value. But I mean, it is really class specific, so you have to be making a mechanic for it to be worth anything. That said, um, we go to the mid gear and the lower gear. That's the Tengu set, Tengu Mask, Tengu Scroll. I get HP Leech from the scroll, and the combo with the mask and the scroll gives 10% damage to all monsters. It also gives 10% ranged attack damage. If you're doing Matto, you used ranged attacks, and you're going to have 120 strength. So it works for both Axe and Matto builds. It works better for Matto builds, but it works really well for Axe because of the leech that it gives you, and it does give you 10% damage. Evil Dragon Armor is a must-have for leveling. You get so much leech from it. I never have problems with HP or SP. I leech it automatically. I do stack a lot of leeching. It's just kind of tucked in the build wherever I can get it. So I have it from the Tengu Scroll, I have it from here, and then I have it from the Malicious set of Shadow Armor, which all increases my leech chance. So the weapon is the plus 12 Power Storm Tornado Axe. You can use this at level 100. It's weapon level 4, and it reduces the cooldown of Axe Tornado by 1%, which lets you spam it every second. And then inside we have the True Howard card, which gives 60% Axe Tornado damage if it's in a level 4 weapon and it's plus 10 or higher. Next, we have the Skin of Ladon. This is actually better than a Fallen Angel Wing with Fighting Spirit enchants, and it's a lot cheaper. So if you're going a physical class that uses Fighting Spirit, don't get a Fallen Angel Wing, get a Skin of Ladon. It gives Agi plus 5, Vit plus 5, MDef plus 10. It does all this other stuff. And then at plus 7, it restores 10 SP when you kill a monster. So that quality of life alone is great, because if you kill 4 monsters in a mob, you get 40 SP back. If your ability costs 40 SP, or this Axe Tornado costs 26 SP, So if I kill 4 monsters, I can Axe Tornado twice. It actually regens your SP really well at just +7. And then at +8, for every 20 Agi and Vit, you get attack +15. So we have 190 Agi and Vit, so we're getting credit for 180 of it, which means that we have a 9 times multiplier on this 15 attack. So 9 times 15 attack is what we're getting. And then it's not +9 because I was too lazy, but if it was, it would give 10% or 10 more SP. So it would give 20 SP every time you killed something, which will always keep your SP full all the time. You'll never have to worry about leeching SP if you use a Skin of Ladon. And then it has a Deviant card in it. Since I don't have a shield, I want as much reduction as I can, so Deviling card is actually really good for that. And I got one by opening MCAs, so I figured I'd use it. With the foot gear, you want +9 temporal temporal boots or temporal Dex Boots. Temporal boots will give you 21 attack at +9, 50 additional attack for 120 strength, and then Fighting Spirit gives 24 attack. So 24 plus 21 is 45, plus 50 is 95 attack from the shoes. And then you have Bear's Power on top of that, which gives 200 strength for 5 seconds when you're taking damage. So absolutely massive to your damage. Everything mechanic does is strength based, so getting that Bear's Power to go off is actually pretty clutch. And then lastly, for the accessory, we have the Archaeans Necklace, and that increases my Axe Tornado damage by 3% per accessory for each or for every 3 base levels. So that's about 60% per accessory. So if you add that all up, that's just call it 60%, 60%. This would be another 60%. So we're at 180, and then the work cap, so we're at 280% Axe Tornado damage. It's really stacking that modifier, but what it does is it makes it so that my damage is the same against everything. Since I'm not doing anything that's specific to any individual monster, my damage is just the same across the board. So it's really consistent. Other gear I want to touch on quickly. This is a must-have for a Matto build. This build requires 2. Since I don't have instant cast, I need to get instant cast by using 2 supplemental chips. I only have 1 right now, but it gives strength +5, vit +5, dex +5. It reduces the cast time by 30% if you have arm cannon level 3, which we do. If neutral barrier is level 3, it reduces the variable cast time of arm cannon by 50%. So if you have neutral barrier 3 and you have 2 supplemental chips, you have 100% reduced cast time of arm cannon. And the same deal with ice launcher and flame launcher. And then if pile bunker is level 3, it also gives strength +5, vit +5, dex +5, and attack +100, which we also have. So if I have 2 supplemental chips, I'm doing a lot of damage with arm cannon. And it makes it really spammable, and since we have fire research level 5, it makes it so we don't consume Matto gear fuel. So if you're hybrid, this is a super clutch item to have. It's definitely good to have 2. I was wrong in my first video. 2 is the way to go if you don't have instant cast. Yeah, so that is what I wanted to note there. I do like Eye of Illusion on mechanic. It gives 10% HP and SP, which helps with that suicidal destruction damage. We have a driver band, which helps with the suicidal destruction cooldown. And then we have adamant 3 on it, so we get some HP from the upper headgear. Uh, for for the Solar God Helm, I would put 2 attack enchants in there for my upper costume and mid costume. And then lower costume, I would do anything that has 1% max HP. For Woe, I like using the Imuk shield in the Woe set because it helps reduce your ranged damage taken. And then I have a kick step card in there for additional 30%. Gives 8% HP and 30% long ranged attack reduction. So basically I run 100% ranged attack reduction in Woe. You want the Unfrozen Woe set. And then if you're doing MVPing, you want the Liberation Shadow set. And then Plus 15 Crimson Mace is good. And then if you want some extra attack, the Royal Guard Shield combo is good to have as well. And then also some alternatives is the Dex Boots instead of the Strength Boots. Dex Boots will give you some ranged attack damage, but it also reduces your fixed cast time if you have 120 Dex, which we have. So we would lose that half second of fixed cast time. Uh, Robo Arm is good, has high attack, pretty good level 4 weapon. If you have kick step or rock step cards, I had 2 rock step cards in it, but I sold them. I figured the Zenny that I would get from the rock steps was worth way more than their value, so I just sold them. And then if you want to go axe boomerang, I have a +9 Bellum guillotine, which is pretty good in WoW. It increases the damage of axe boomerang by a lot, 80%, and then against demi-humans you get 60% increase in damage. So that's pretty good. And then if you wear that with a Sea Captain hat and this supplement combo, you can pretty much spam axe boomerang at your attack speed. So I want to demonstrate that real quick. So we'll go ahead and put that stuff on, and we'll axe boomerang real quick. Let's get some buffs on. Oh, we need the accessory. So when you if you have if you have the Sea Captain hat and you have the supplemental strength and supplemental dex part combos, it reduces 100% of the cooldown, so you have no delay. So you can spam this at whatever your attack speed is. So we have 188 right now, which is pretty much as fast as you can humanly click. So in WoW, against a real player, like, you would be doing a lot of damage. Potentially, assuming they're not running a ton of demi or range reduction. But I thought that that would be just like a for fun option, so I picked it up. But yeah, that's the gear, that's everything. Sorry, I really tried to make that as short as I could, but it just didn't work. It's impossible. There's so much gear, and it all is so important. Like I didn't even go over the physical shadow set, which gives me a lot of attack. Like there's so much to talk about. But I do kind of want to take the time to get into the leveling portion of the video, so let's get started with that. Uh, I started off like every other class that I do. I went to Nog Road, and you can see right off the bat, if you prepare and you have all the gear necessary, you're doing pretty good damage right out the gate. We're doing about 40 to 50k, and we don't even have half the right buffs on. Like, um, mechanic is one of those things that it takes a little bit of time to actually get used to it and figure out kind of how to keep your buffs up and find mobs and kite around and not tank a bunch of damage. And there's a lot of like subtlety to it. It's pretty straightforward, but it's also there's some subtlety to it. Like you pretty much run until you can't move anymore because the mob is so big and you attack it. But um, yeah, the trick is to keep like your weapon perfection up. You want to keep power maximize on, adrenaline rush, power thrust. You don't really need to keep power thrust up, but um, I like to have it up. Cart boost as well. Cart boost is actually super short for Mastersmith, and or the Mastersmith version of it's pretty short. So you'll see pretty much every time I fly wing or every other time, I'll like cart boost right away. It becomes a habit after a while. I'm always cart boosting. I'm always using weapon perfection because your damage will go down a lot if you don't have those because there's a lot of variability in your damage with being a level 4 weapon. But yeah, I always like leveling in Nog Road. It's always fast. Except lately we've been having that problem where mobs will disappear by the end of the week and the map is a lot less dense than after maintenance. So in those situations, I like to go to OGH to level since it's an instance. the mobs are always going to be in the same place, and they're on a respawn timer, so you don't have to worry about like what time of the week you're gonna go level. You just go to the instance, it generates the monsters infinitely. Um, and this is kind of how I would level, especially if there's like a bad turn in. Like usually people level Gramps for the mid range, like 100 plus, 100 to 120 or 125 plus. But if the turn in is really bad, and you're trying to get to 150, uh, OGH is pretty good. And I've covered this before in a genetic video, but yeah, basically all you do is you go to each of the respawns and the monsters will appear, and then they're actually worth a good amount of experience. So it's a predictable, they're in a predictable location. The mob size is always pretty manageable. There's a lot of mobs to leech off of, but you can kind of hit them before they can do a lot of damage to you. Uh, it's also super good to use in Abyss Dress here because everything is undead and shadow. So you do like 90% more damage. And then I was using Aspersio Scrolls because I didn't want to dual client a priest and constantly keep Aspersioing myself. So I just brought some holy waters and a Aspersio Scroll, which let me do a lot more damage to the demon or the undead. And basically what I'd do is I'd shield spell, and then I'd put the tornado axe on, Spursio, re-up my buffs, start my rotation. Um, but when I wasn't doing OGH, I was doing the high turn-in, and it makes such a big difference. When there's a good turn-in and high turn-in, the difference between a good one and a bad one is basically the difference between whether or not you're going to get like 150 in a given week. Because if it's a good turn in, you can go 125 to 150 in like a day. But if it's a bad turn in, you're not going to even do it. So you're just going to like there's the alternative is so painfully slow that it's almost not worth doing. Like OGH is the alternative and it does get really slow like 135 plus. Like it's really not a good leveling place 140 plus. Um, but if you can get a good high turn in and you can just spam this one, I was able to get, once they started doing good turn-ins, I was able to get 175 in like a week. But the hardest part is getting to 150. If getting to 150 from 120 is so bad if there's not a good turn-in. So if you're trying to level to 150 and you have a 125 and you're like struggling with it, it's probably because there's a bad turn in and you just haven't had a chance to like, I don't know, see one that's good. But this one was good. The reason being is they were both of the monsters were earth, so they were weak to fire converting. So I would fire convert my axe tornado, and when Bear's power would go off, you can see we're doing like 140,000 damage. And this is pretty low level. This is like 125 to 140 or something like that. It's not really where the damage ends up for Axe Tornado, but you're one-shotting here for sure. Like you're one-shotting everything. And those Mantis actually have a really big HP pool. So yeah, this is just another turn-in clip. This was a different week, but you can see like it's so good. Like earlier in the week when the mobs haven't really disappeared and everywhere you go there's just your screen is covered in monsters and you just they're both earth property too, so I'm converting that. And you can see it. Like I think the highest hit that I saw 190, yeah, 192. I think I even yeah, I screenshotted that in the clip. But yeah, 192,000 damage with Bear's power and a convert. Like if you keep your buffs up and you're using stat foods and stuff, like you can do some serious damage on mech. Like I'm doing more damage with Axe Tornado than a lot of rangers that I saw down there with Aerostorm. Like if you have the right gear, you could really do good. You could level really well. I think that the leveling ability of Mechanic is a little bit deceptive to how good they are, like outside of leveling. Because yeah, you can one-shot a lot of things leveling, but when it comes to MVPing and stuff, your DPS is still pretty slow. Like the damage potential is a lot like it's a lot lower than a genetic, for example. Like even though a genetic would probably be doing maybe 80k with cart cannon, if they optimize for MVPing and they can spam cart cannon, they just do so much more DPS. Um, so it's like it's kind of deceiving because it's a big number, but it's you got to keep in mind the rate that you can do that damage at. It's only 1 a second. So when I do 140,000 damage, that's 140,000 damage a second, whereas like other classes that can spam faster will do more DPS. It just doesn't look as big. It's weird. It's kind of hard to explain, but I hope that makes sense. But the last place that I have leveling in is Nightmare Clock Tower, and on average, by the end of it, I was probably doing around 140k with Axe Tornado, without Bear's Power, and then when Bear's Power would go off, I would do about 200k. So yeah, that's keep in mind, big bells are neutral, like they're not boss property, I don't think. And yeah, I mean, I'm not converting, I'm not doing anything special. This is just my raw Axe Tornado damage with buffs and stuff like that. So, um, it's high. Like, not many other things are gonna hit this high in a burst like that. Like, you can see some GXs down here doing like 90k with Meteor Assault, and they're doing 2 or 3 of those a second. Like, there's not a whole lot of things that will out DPS this. Um, it just it's just different for MVPing. It's really hard to explain, but um, at some point I will try and do all of the MVPs that like all the instances and bosses and stuff. I'll try and do that on mechanic just so you can kind of see what I mean, but uh, it's good damage, but it's not fantastic. I think for MVPing even you'd want to axe boomerang because it's faster. Um, you get to do more attacks per second, like 3 or 4 instead of just the one. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for mechanic. I had a lot of fun. Hopefully you enjoyed the video as well, and we'll see you in the next one.